The Turkish Prime Minister says Kurdish rebels will drown in blood. This after at least a dozen Turkish soldiers were killed in attacks by fighters of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers Party, or PKK. The government's peace initiative lasted less than a year. How did things get out of control? And how will this renewed conflict unfold? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. It's a 26-year-old conflict that has claimed more than 40,000 lives. Kurdish separatists have been fighting the Turkish government to create an ethnic homeland within Turkey since 1984. Earlier this month, the rebels dismissed a year-old ceasefire because of what they called Turkey's continuing hostility to the Kurdish people. The violence escalated on Saturday, claiming the lives of 11 Turkish soldiers and those of at least 12 members of the Kurdish Workers Party, or PKK. As Turkish leaders gathered to mourn the deaths of the soldiers, the country's prime minister denounced the PKK and vowed to crush them.
They will dry in their own swamp, and they will drown in their own blood. We have never fallen into intimidation, and we never will fall. We have never given up hope, and we never will. We have never surrendered to the spiral of violence, and we never will in the future.
These strong words followed years of attempting to implement reforms for Turkey's Kurd minority, and at the same time initiating dialogue with the neighboring countries who have substantial Kurdish populations. Shortly after Erdogan's government came to power in 2002, it ended the long-imposed state of emergency in the Kurdish areas southeast of the country. In mid-2009, Erdogan announced new steps to solve the Kurdish conflict, known as the Kurdish Opening. This initiative included a series of steps with the intention of achieving peace. Erdogan promised to allow Kurdish language education, permit Kurdish names to be given to children, and allowed the first Kurdish language TV channel to open. But at the end of last year, the courts banned the Kurdish Democratic Society Party, or DTP, claiming it had links to the PKK. And since then, the Prime Minister's Kurdish initiative has failed to make any substantial progress. Well, joining us now to discuss this are our guests. In Ankara, Saban Dishli, advisor to the Turkish Prime Minister on Foreign Affairs. In Baghdad, Mahmoud Othman, Kurdish MP in the Iraqi Parliament. In London, Fadi Hakura, Turkey specialist and an associate fellow at Chatham House. Let's begin with Saban Dishli in Ankara. Is this an end to what the Prime Minister called the Kurdish Opening?
Definitely not. And as you referred, the Prime Minister's speech during the ceremony of the soldiers who were killed, he very deliberately and underlining definitely that this opening program, democratization initiative, will definitely continue. The most important thing here is, of course, the balance between the security and the freedom. Security is very important. Also, the other very important issue is we have to separate between the terrorists, they are the same everywhere, and the Kurdish issue. We have started the initiative to deal with the Kurdish issue in economic affairs, in social affairs. If you look at the investments, the projects, big multi-billion-dollar projects in Eastern Anatolia, so-called the South Anatolian Project, Eastern Anatolian Project, mass housing projects, the highways, the schools, the hospitals, new airports, the economic parts of this issue is continued. Also, as you have referred, opening a Kurdish language channels with TRT, opening institutes in the universities to study Kurdish cultures and whatever. All those initiatives has taken place and will continue. And both Minister of Interior as well stated it, and the Prime Minister.
Let me just pick up on something that you said, Shaban Dishli, and I would like to take it to Mahmoud Othman in Baghdad. We heard there from the Prime Minister's spokesman that the separation has got to be made between Kurdish people and terrorists. From your view in Baghdad, do you see this type of distinction being made in Iraq's borders and the southeast of Turkey?
Well, I'm glad that he's saying this, but they are not practically implementing that. Actually, the ones the Turkish government called terrorists, these people are having a lot of support inside the Kurds of Turkey. You can't separate. And I think to use force against them wouldn't end the problem. It has been used for the last 26 years, and still there is no end to it. So I think the question is political. It's not a question of terrorism. It's a question of people in Turkey who have identity. They want to have their identity. They want to have their rights. Even in the last local election, Mr. Erdogan himself, he said this was a vote for identity, not for services. So anyway, I think if there is a bit of a revision of the Turkish policy and some reforms, they could solve this problem altogether. I am glad that the Erdogan government is making some opening on the Kurdish issue. It's better than previous governments, of course. But I hope that will go to the end, and there will be more reforms, some changes in the constitution, and try to pursue peace and dialogue in solving this problem. I'm sure it will be solved easily. But through force, I think it will be more complicated, and it's sorry. One is sorry to have Turks killed, Kurds killed, destruction, and no end to it, as we see always, escalation without having any end, but more complications.
Well, Fadi Hakura in London, is the possibility of dialogue with the PKK possible in any way? And do you think that this is a critical issue?
I think at the present time, any kind of dialogue, whether direct or indirect, is practically impossible. Turkey is now entering an election period. It is expected that next year, perhaps in May or June of next year, general elections will take place. And given now the level of violence now in the southeast of Turkey between the Turkish military and the PKK or the Kurdistan Workers Party, I see any kind of dialogue highly unlikely at the present time.
Well, Shaban Dishli, let me put that back to you in Ankara. The issue of the whole Kurdish problem could possibly become an election issue. The Prime Minister and his government have actually staked their political platform on reforms with regards to the Kurdish minority in Turkey. Is this a political problem for the Prime Minister and his party?
No, we never had any election-minded policies, whether in economy. If you look at our 4 previous elections, we wouldn't run an election economy. We wouldn't do any election-related policies because we are seeing this as a long-term issue. Of course, as you rightly mentioned, this is almost 30 years continuing problem for Turkey. And unfortunately, whenever Turkey has shown some improvements in various areas, this thing starts picking up. We do not have, as Justice and Development Party, any problem whatsoever with the Kurdish people or the Kurdish original citizens. And all our activities are directed to further democratization, further bettering economic and social lives and the cultural rights, as mentioned. And all those things, when you go and talk where we have a big AK Party, Justice and Development Party organization in the regions. We are all the time with our MPs, with our prime ministers, with our party members, with the people. They also want this democratization process to continue. Therefore, we don't see it as an election problem, and we have seen in the previous elections tremendous support to our party from that region. We are, except one cities in Turkey, #1 party in all south and southeastern cities of Turkey. Therefore, this is not an election issue. This is not a Kurdish problem issue. This is a pure terror. Terrorists continue to create a kind of environment for themselves so they can pull up more people to the mountains, more support from the people as things develop there. If you look at the recent investments, we have built, as I mentioned, almost 60 new schools we built in Turkey are built in those provinces, in those cities. The hospitals, the social program, social support program, each kids going to school, the government pays his or her mother, not the father, the mother, certain amount of money so that he can spend for better education of the schools.
Well, looking at all these reforms, Saban Dishli, looking at these reforms that the government has made internally, it does appear to be a two-phase approach. Internal political democratic reforms, but at the same time as well, the Erdogan government has been involved very strongly in external dialogue with its neighbors. Syria, for example, discussions with Iraq. Mahmoud Othman in Baghdad, do you see a two-phase process like this underway, that the Turkish government or the Erdogan government, since it's been in power, has been looking internally, but at the same time very strongly externally?
Well, actually, I think there have been some reforms inside. But when you look at it, look all these talks they made with Syria, they make with Iran, they make cooperation with the Iraqi government. They're trying to end this problem. This is an internal problem. It's a problem of millions of Kurds who are living inside Turkey. Some of them are in the mountains, that's right. They are carrying arms, but they have been carrying arms to defend their rights. And if they have been given a real amnesty, maybe a lot of them would have gone back to Turkey, try to be a legal party, working politically as a civil party and not through violence. And if Turkey, for example, if the Turkish government could, I don't say they should open dialogue with PKK now. Let them open dialogue with BDP, which is a legal Kurdish party, which has the Kurds, they have been elected to Turkish parliament through Turkish law. These people are in Turkish parliament. Why don't they talk to these people about this issue and try to take their points of view on how to go and solve it? I think this is the issue. The issue is that it couldn't be simply solved through violence. They have used violence the last 26 years. What were the results? So I think if they look at it carefully and talk about it with the people who are in Turkey, not the people in the mountain. Let them not talk to the people in the mountain. Talk to the people who are in the municipalities. Talk to the people who are in Turkish parliament, the Kurds. And there is an issue, and this issue has to be tackled. It's a national issue. It's not an issue of social and economic reforms only. It's an issue of a people who think they should have an identity, they should have their rights, within Turkey, of course. So that is the issue to be tackled, I think.
Well, Fadi Hakura in London, is this an internal issue largely?
It is an internal issue, but I would not characterize it as a Kurdish problem. What Turkey really needs is a democracy initiative, a general democratic initiative for all the citizens of Turkey. Turks and Kurds have a lot of cultural linkages together. The rates of intermarriage between Kurds and Turks is now tenfold compared to 30 years ago. Also, also Kurds occupy some of the most senior positions of government in Turkey. So what's really needed is a general democratic initiative for all the citizens of Turkey, a new civilian secular constitution, as well as a more liberal state for all the citizens of Turkey.
Well, let's just take a pause here and take a look at exactly who is the Kurdistan Workers Party, or PKK. For 3 decades, the movement has been battling Turkey for a Kurdish homeland with well over 40,000 people killed. This group is banned in many countries, with the United States and the European Union both labeling it a terrorist organization, as does Turkey, despite intermittent efforts at resolving the conflict. In 1999, Abdullah Öcalan, leader of the PKK, was captured and sentenced to death. In 2002, this was commuted to life imprisonment when Turkey abolished the death penalty. In October 2007, following a security pact between Turkey, Iraq and the US, the Turkish parliament gave the go-ahead for military operations in Iraq in pursuit of Kurdish rebels. 2 months later, Turkey launched a series of airstrikes on fighters from the PKK movement inside Iraq. That round of conflict ended with a tenuous ceasefire, but in recent weeks, renewed violent clashes have left both Turkish soldiers, PKK fighters, and of course a number of civilians dead. Fadi Hakura in London, there has been ongoing violence in this decade-long conflict. Is there any reason whatsoever that this conflict can be resolved through violence?
I think that this conflict is an unwinnable war between Turkey, between the Turkish military and the PKK, or the Kurdistan Workers Party. The PKK can definitely not defeat the Kurdish military, but neither could the Turkish military defeat the PKK. What you have seen is a cycle of violence. Violence breeds more violence, and taking a very security-focused approach to the Kurdish issue, I think, has not yielded positive results for the resolution of this problem in Turkey.
Well, the Turkish army is the second most powerful in NATO, for example. Saban Dishli in Ankara, is there concern among this government that just as previous governments have failed to end this crisis by force, that this is going to be the result yet again?
No, I just want to comment in a few items the previous speakers from Baghdad has said, talking to MPs. We have in our party 76 Kurdish origin MPs. We are also, when we design those openings or the economic initiatives whatsoever, we are talking with those MPs as well. And one thing, talking to BDP, remember recently we were trying to change the constitution, and there was one item there which BDP also voted no. That was making the party closure difficult, or actually totally forbidding them, instead of punishing people who were reasoned to close the parties. Therefore, the dialogues is totally open. We have strong dialogues with the Kurdish people, with wherever they are. And our party, Justice and Development Party, we have every month with 3 independent inquiries, the enquêteurs, making public opinions and asking questions in every sort, both to Turkish or the Kurdish peoples and everyone. Therefore, we are doing everything we could do. Thirdly, then I will come back to your questions. We have dialogue with Iraq. We have dialogue with the northern Iraq people.
Those points taken, but let's get on to that question about, is force still going to be practiced, and does the government believe it can succeed?
Definitely, we will succeed. We have to succeed, and we have there the three-party committee agreement, the United States, Iraqi government, and Turkish government, to share information and to fight against terror. And I think we will do everything in social, economic, but as well as military means to stop this. And,
well, Mahmoud
today,
Othman in Baghdad, let me put to you, we had there the agreement that has been reached between Turkey and the US, but that conflict, that force being used, is used sometimes in Iraq itself as well. This does pose a threat to stability, certainly within that area of Iraq and in the country as a whole, does it not?
Well, actually, we don't like that conflict to continue. It affects us negatively. Definitely, we have been always saying, and even the last declaration was by Mr. Barzani, who visited Turkey officially 2 weeks ago. He said that he is willing, first of all, he called on Kurds of Turkey to cooperate with the government of Erdogan on the opening policy towards Kurds. This is one. Secondly, he said, all the Kurds, we are ready to cooperate with the Turkish government to solve this problem. Of course, we think, and on our side, that this is a political problem. It could be solved, for example, not by force. For example, PKK, many times in the last year, 3-4 times, they made ceasefire, one-sided. And then had the Turkish government responded as an amnesty or something like that, that would have opened the way to solve this problem. But they never responded to that, saying that this is a terrorist and try to fight it and never ended in fighting. Then where does it go? This is a vicious circle. It goes around and around with victims without the end. We want to have a solution that could have the end. If these people are persuaded to go back to Turkey and try to work there as a legal party or politically, not through violence, not carrying arms, leave their arms, and then solve the problem one way or another, that would be the best way to get rid of it, not just try to fight it, because in those mountains you fight on both sides of the frontier. Civilians and people, innocent people on both sides, in Iraqi Kurdistan and Turkey also will be suffering. And a lot of people will be killed, and Turks will be killed, Kurds will be killed, but there will be no end to this organization or this movement.
Well, Fadi Hakura in London,
right.
Briefly, what is the solution? We've heard the debate about it, we've heard the causes from various points of view, but is there a clear solution, do you believe, that might be missed by the politicians involved?
Well, the solution is a concerted effort at increasing democracy across all of Turkey, trying to eliminate the culture of violence that exists in the southeast of Turkey. For example, the Turkish government has been funding so-called village guards, around 60,000 village guards that with arms and money. So this against the PKK. So this culture of violence, more democracy, and more and tackling the socioeconomic feudal problems in the southeast of Turkey, I think would go a long way to resolving the Kurdish issue in Turkey.
Well, Saban Dishli, very briefly, you heard there the views of Fadi Hakura, the culture of violence. Do you think this is something that the government is looking at?
We would use all the means. I think the most important thing is recently we have seen from various European countries as declared PKK as terrorist organization. They are trying efforts to cut their financial routes because they were getting a lot of finance from some European states illegally with force and whatever. The village guards, you have to protect the Kurdish citizens from them as well, because any investments the government is trying to bring there, they are attacking, burning the machineries. They don't want any investment. Even the schools, they are killing the teachers, the normal teachers. They don't want the improvements in economic, in social, in everywhere there, so they can capture more supporters from the people. So,
well, let's see what happens
important
with that support from the people in the weeks and months ahead. Thanks to our guests, Saban Dishli in Ankara, Fadi Hakura in London, and Mahmoud Uthman in Baghdad. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.